Good morning, everybody. Am I audible to everybody? Participants, kindly post a message in the chat box. Thank you. Our speaker today has also arrived at the meeting. Rajiv, Mr. Rajiv, are you there? Mr. Rajiv
Yeah,
Krishnan?
Sridevi.
Yes.
I'm here.
Okay, done. Then shall we start?
Okay.
Okay, done. We'll start, Mr. Rajiv. Thank you. Good morning, everybody. It's my great pleasure to join you all today for this webinar. First of all, I would like to welcome all the faculty members from various institutions of India who believe in discovering knowledge offline and online too. Let me start with a couplet from Tirukkural. ஒருமைக்கண் தானற்ற கல்வி ஒருவர்க்கு எழுமையும் ஏமக்குடைத்து, which means the learning which a man has acquired in one birth will lead him pleasure during 7 births. Such a learning experience has been generously given by PSG and Sons Charities for the past 75 years. I express my sincere gratitude to PSG management, our managing trustee sir, secretary sir, principal ma'am, and vice principal sir for having given us this learning platform today. To support our belief today, we have Mr. Rajiv Krishnan with us to share his expertise. Pleasure is mine to welcome and introduce Mr. Rajiv Krishnan as an alumni of PSG College of Arts and Science. He started his career as a software engineer in McAfee, then moved to Oracle as a localization lead. He also served as an internationalization project manager in Microsoft Seattle for more than 4 years. Now, he is a principal internationalization engineer in Environmental Systems Research Institute, California. With all due respect, I welcome Mr. Rajiv Krishnan to start his presentation. Mr. Rajiv, so you can start.
Thanks, Sridevi.
Okay, kindly switch on your video.
Okay.
Participants, kindly pin the speaker with the name Rajiv Krishnan so that you can view him. And participants, don't try to present your screen because it is disturbing others. Participants, kindly pin the speaker with the name Rajiv Krishnan. And please mute your audio and video throughout the session. If you have any questions, kindly post it in the chat box. On behalf of you, I'll ask the questions to the speaker. Thank you. Mr. Rajiv, you can carry
on. Everyone able to see my screen?
Is the speaker audible to you? Kindly post it in the chat box, please.
Okay. You're able to see the presentation, right? So let's start. Okay. So today we will be looking at the session going global. So what does going global means? It means taking your product to all parts of the world. Today, when a product is developed in one country, it can be viewed across the globe. So your product is to be delivered across the globe. That is the goal. In this session, we will go over the concepts of globalization, internationalization, and localization. And it's an overview. If you need is provided in the presentation, or you can contact me. Well, I have left my contact details at the end of this presentation. So globalization. Globalization is the work encompass everything that a company does to take a product to the global market, from market analysis, product definition, development, support, services, etc. And internationalization and localization is are the part of a product development process to achieve globalization. So if you're in short, globalization is nothing but internationalization plus localization put together. And let's see why we globalize. So if you take MNCs. Today, the revenue and growth are coming from outside Americas. That's the North America. Any company like Apple, Facebook, Google, Microsoft, most of them have their 50% of revenue coming outside of Americas. It's not only on growth. So let's see some statistics for this. If you look here, this is the revenue of Apple. As you can see, only 40% is coming from Americas. The rest 60% is coming outside this. And Asia Pacific is Asia plus Australia and New Zealand. Greater China is China, Hong Kong, and Taiwan. Japan and Europe are the other two big categories here. And if you look at revenue, see this, about 41 billion is coming from Americas, but the rest 60 billion is coming from rest of the world. And it's not only for a company like Apple, which sells only premium products, right? If you take Google or Facebook, which are ad-based companies, which provide free services but charges on the ad, for them also, North America is about only 50%. Rest of the things are coming from rest of the world, especially when you look at growth population, it is going to be Asia and Africa's. As you can see in here, if you look at the chart from 2017 to 2019, the revenue growth has almost doubled in all the other region, Asia Pacific, Europe, and US. But in US, it's kind of 30 to 40% range. Even the advertisement revenue for a company like Facebook is this follows the similar pattern like their revenue. Here, Facebook has about 90% of their revenue coming from advertisement only. It's not only advertisement companies. The other a good example would be Netflix. So if you look at Netflix, they did not have any presence, international presence till 2012. After which they started internationalization, creating content as well as their service in other markets. As you can see, today their revenue is 50% international and 50% is coming from United States. Next one is the projection. So how do Netflix see their growth going to be? If you look here, in North America, they are expecting about 30% growth. But if you are looking at Asia Pacific, like especially India, they are looking at about 300% growth. So this is where the companies are thinking about globalization and how they want to achieve their revenue and grow their company. Now we have seen why we globalize. We will also see why we should do it correctly. So everyone knows Google photo app, right? So it is a simple app where you have take your picture, and Google artificial intelligence and machine learning will try to identify what kind of photo it is. So if you upload a bike, it will be uploaded as bike. It will recognize it as a bike. It will recognize as a human, things like that. So what happened when they released their product? Here you can see these skyscrapers were identified correctly as skyscrapers, airplane cars. But look at what happened to the African American person. So what happened when this happened? So Google was accused of racism. It killed most of the customer goodwill. No one was felt good about Google after, like they were saying this photo app is not good, and they were not using it. It opened up the entire diversity issues in Google. Government got involved and things like that. So, but it was a simple error. What was the error? Like the developers did not think outside their culture. So it uh, photo app was a small team, about 10 developers, and they didn't have an African American in their team. They didn't really think about them. They did not test it, and that's how it failed. So when you are developing something, you have to always think about all the customers. Think outside your uh, country region, right? Today no one can stop a product which is released in one region to be downloaded and used in another region. So when you're developing something, you need to always remember uh, to think about other customers or the customers around the globe. The next big challenge on globalization is geopolitical. So these are things which I think which are outside our control, which is like, and there are uh, sorry, I'm getting an okay. So let's see the geopolitical issues like maps, for example. It is very territory based. So a map in different regions will be viewed differently. The example is when Windows 95 first came in, India threatened to ban Windows 95 over Kashmir because Kashmir was shown as part of Pakistan, right? But it is the same software they were selling across the globe. So what they had to do was, during that time they had to pull in all the Windows 95 CD from India, had to change it and again release it. So this cost them time to market, as well as it cost them in millions. The next thing is flags. When you are using certain flags, it's always an issue, because if you get it wrong, it will end up very badly, or it will involve local government intervention. So it's better to avoid flags in your products. And the same way, region, country names. So if you, because there are certain areas where we are not sure how to call it, like Taiwan, is it a country or is it part of China? These are all geopolitical issues, and you try to stay away from it. So most of these geopolitical issues are done through legal team, both locally as well as from the main office. So as an engineering part, you need to be aware of it, but most of the geopolitical issues will be taken care by locally. So let's move on to next, internationalization. This is the engineering part of globalization, where it's the process of developing a program core whose features and code design are not solely based on single language or local. Instead, its design is developed for multiple or multicultural input, display, and output. And all this is defined by Unicode. And Unicode is the industry standard. So internationalization is also known as I18N. That's simply because there is I, after that 18 characters, and N. So short, everyone calls it as I18N. And it is an architecture change. That is, if you don't build it with I18N inbuilt, your product have to have uh, uh, changes very often, and it is very costly changes. And internationalization is achieved in through three parts. One is the support for Unicode, support for regional formats, and support for localizability. And we will go through each one of them later. But first, we need to understand what is a language and what is an IIT, to differentiate between, to understand IIT9 better. So first, language. So language, everyone knows it is English, French, Tamil, Japanese, any language, right? Region, again, US, Canada, or most of the regions are countries or certain islands. But a local is a combination of language plus region. So, example, a region can have multiple languages. Like, for example, in India, we have about 45 languages recognized in softwares. In the same way, a language goes through certain modification when it is accepted in certain locales. For example, the English we speak in India is very different from the English used in United States. And there is, we all know the difference in how we speak in between Tamil India and Tamil Sri Lanka. So that is local. So, like, for example, you can see in the screenshot English, right? English United Kingdom, English United States, English India. There are about 91 different Englishes recognized in CLDR. So Unicode. Yes, I said Unicode is the industry standard. It's the universal char set encoding standard. It defines the how a character is represented in text files or web pages or any other document. So it is basically a code page, and it is how you will be seeing these characters in different softwares. Example, this good morning or Kalai Vanakam. This is especially in Tamil. These are called complex scripts, complex Unicode scripts. And an example is emojis or Unicode characters. So we have seen a lot of emojis recently being introduced. All these are all Unicode characters. So Unicode, they go and say that, okay, this smiley faces occupies this character, this code page, and that's how they are defining Unicode. So to understand more about Unicode, you can go to this unicode.org. That's the link provided here. You can go there and study more about Unicode. And when it comes to product, all products should be able to accept inputs, store it, and display Unicode characters. So let's see an example. This one, right? Even though we all, most of us use Facebook in English, that the UI is still in English, the way we interact with others, it will be through different languages, right? So even though I use it in English, my friends will be speaking in Tamil or Arabic or Hebrew. And I, as a user, should be able to see all these languages together. And that is done through Unicode. So Unicode will support English as well as all the languages which are today supported by software. So how do your wrong encoding look like? So this is how and wrong encoding will look like. So this Jesus Lopez, you can see the U and O. These are called accent characters, which are widely used in Spanish. It will look like something like this. So this extended characters loses their uh, character formation, and it will look like a junk character. And when it comes to keyboard or the input, This is one of the example. Like this is the Tamil keyboard. So if you are creating a Tamil document like in Word, you will be able to use this one. And so like your software should be able to accept input in Unicode characters. It should store the Unicode characters correctly, and it also should display the Unicode characters correctly. That is the first step to getting your product internationalized. Second uh, part will be the regional formats. So what is regional format? A regional format is a collection of cultural and regional settings such as date and time formatting convention, currencies, decimal formatting, measurement, these things. So these are all called regional formats. And all these formats for a country, this is what their date format should look like. This is the measurement they use. Everything is documented in what we call it as CLDR, Common Local Data Repository. It is an Unicode community where it works with the different local governments as well as the engineers there in that local, and identify these data, and they document these data, and they release it every 6 months, and we can go and check whether these formats are the formats which we are using in our software. Usually these kind of data are pushed from the platform themselves. Like if you are using your Windows operating system, Windows will do an update, and they will automatically pull in the CLDR changes from Unicode. And this is a famous example where NASA you confuse the metric system and caused an arbiter loss, and it made a loss of about 125 million. So what happened here was there were two teams. One team was using the metric system of millimeters and meters, which is the European and Indian standards, whereas the other team was using measurements with English system, that is inches, feet, pound. So for example, if the arbiter wants to move 2 millimeters, one was trying to move 2 millimeters, the other team was recognizing it as 2 inches. So that's how the arbiter went off, and it crashed. And believe it or not, even today, even after 20 years, this is the common mistake everyone makes in software, assuming that, okay, this is the format everyone is going to use. So what are the different formats? The common format is this date format. In in USA, we always use month, date, year. But in other formats like Japanese, it's the year first, followed by month and day. And in India, we follow the date, month, and year format. But if you look at Thai, for example, they use altogether a different calendar. And they use a Buddhist calendar, which year is like 2544. Like, so there are different calendars, like Arabic uses Hijri calendar, there is an Hebrew calendar. So everyone might use different formats or different calendars. Should be able to recognize that and display it in their locale. Right? For example, if Netflix says that your subscription will expire on 7/6/2020, you should not have a confusion whether it is July 6th or 7th June. If you are in one country, you are used to certain local or certain format, and that is the format you should be able to display to the user. The next one is the number format. In number format, yeah, we use decimal separator as dot period, right? But most of in German, French, it is comma. So they write 1 comma 25, not 1.25. And this is a common mistake everyone makes in software, where they are expecting an integer and they get a 1 comma 25 is considered a string. And while doing some calculations, they break the software itself. And if you look at thousand separators, it's again some locals uses comma, some dot, and some even space. For Russian or Swedish, it is space. So they write 1 space 285. That's the sub. And grouping, as we know in India, we use 10 lakhs, where there is no concept of lakhs in Europe or US. It's millions, right? So when you're displaying number formats to the user, it should be in user-friendly terms, and it should be a format where the user can easily recognize. The third important thing, or the most basic thing, is localizability. So when you're designing your software code, you should make sure that your code, or what we call as core, is separated so it can be translated into different languages. And these, like, what are the examples of localizabilities are UI design. Like when you're designing something, you need to make sure that that UI can accommodate other languages. And your resource files, right? So any translatable strings should be moved out of the code base into a separate resource file, and you should be reading it from there. And other one is example is color, right? You say that, okay, I'm going to design my UI in such a way that my color is, it will look like this, but it's not true. In certain culture, red is considered good, whereas green is not so good. Or for example, in China, red is an up. So if you look at Chinese stock market, you can see this market is good. It's going up means it is red. When it is going down, it is green. So in India or in US, that's exactly opposite. We always see red as something bad or going down, right? So all your colors, your resource strings, everything should be separated out from your code into a separate file, where you have to just change that file without changing your code. And that's localizability. And why we do localizability is because the text are longer than English in other language like German or Tamil. The strings can be much longer, as much as longer, like 150% growth. So your UI should not have truncation, clipping, things like that. It should accommodate all languages. And in certain Asian languages like Chinese, Korean, Japanese, the characters will be vertically clipping. So they will be, height will be larger than English, and it should not clip on the other uh, characters which are up or down them. And how this is achieved is through a tool, common tool called pseudo translation. So when you're designing your UI design, you don't know whether you will be translating it to all languages or not. But still, what we do is we use a pseudo translation, that is a machine translation, which has this prefix and suffix Unicode characters. So the character will look like something like an English characters, but will have Chinese character in front and back. This way, what happens is when you are translating or when you are designing the software itself, you can pseudo translate and use those characters to check whether your UI can accommodate these translation changes. And the next one concept is right to left languages. In localizability, when we are talking about Chinese and German big characters or horizontal clipping, vertical clipping, right to left possess altogether a different challenges. In Arabic, Hebrew, and Urdu, we are going to read the languages from right to left, right? So how do your UI can accommodate those? So when you detect, okay, this is an Arabic user coming in, you should automatically mirror your UI so that he can read it from right to left. Uh, I will show you an example later in the slides, how to achieve or how it looks in Facebook. And these right to left languages are also known as languages or bidirectional languages, because when these languages comes with and numbers, or they mix with English characters, even though those languages like Hebrew is written from right to left, the numbers or any other language will go from left to right, and there is an always a good mixture of both languages coming together. That's why they are called bidirectional. And one of the example for how to be aware of this reading order is this one. A Swedish company ran an ad in an Arabic newspaper using only the images because they didn't want, they thought without translation they can achieve their goal of communicating. The ad was very simple. A tired man uh, drinks, looks sick, he drinks a glass of their juice and he gets refreshed. So that was the simple communication, and they posted the ad. But in Arabic, what happened was they read it from right to left. So they thought a happy man drinks their drink and becomes a sick man. So that was the reading order. They did not get it correctly. The campaign also failed. So how does it the software achieves this? So if you look here, okay, this is an Facebook, and this is how it will look like for an Arabic user. As soon as he logs in, whatever was in the left goes to the right, and his username and password are also comes to the right, and he can easily identify those things and he can start typing. So it goes from right to left. Usually in most of the web pages, uh, it is the browser contains a language. So if you have installed any like Chrome, Microsoft Edge, or Internet Explorer, what it does, it reads it from your operating system and it is set there. So when you visit any web page or any software, it automatically reads these settings and it identifies, okay, this user is coming from, or his preferred language is this. So it is, there are three different ways of achieving this. One is the browser. The other one is way of asking the user to select it. Usually if you go to Facebook, there is an option for you to change your language. And the third one is like what it's commonly used in Netflix and other regions, where they try to ping your IP, and with your IP they identify from which region you're coming and what are the language options available in that region. So this is localizability. And next concept what we are looking is localization. This is the actual process of adapting a program for a local market. And this includes translating the user interface, sometimes redesigning the UI, sometimes customizing the features, and testing uh, the results to ensure that the program still works. So the first one is translation. As you said, in localizability, if you have done it correctly, your resources will be already in a separate file, and you can pick that file and give it away for translation. The second one is customization. So any good program will have a config file, configuration file, where you can customize your settings. For example, in certain regions, certain terms or certain feature will not make sense. For example, if you are a financial company in India, you will be asking for what is your Aadhaar number, right? The Aadhaar number, if it comes to US, it will be please provide your social security number. In Europe, it will be another government issued ID. In some certain cases, there won't be any uni identification numbers at all. So these are called customization, and these all should be externalized and and the last step is to rebuild all the translated resources back into your main program. So how does a typical localization process look like? This. So when you have a program, for example, Windows, what they do is they extract the English resources, and the English resources analyzed whether there is spelling errors or grammar, and that after analysis, it's checked for risk identification. Mostly it's for any security issues, like whether there is virus or there is any proprietary terms which we are handing off, things like that. And that file is sent to translators for translation. These translators vendors will not typically see your software. They will be just getting a text file, for example, or an Excel file where it says, this is the English translation. Please provide me the localize or the translation in your language. So they will be just looking at the text and they will be typing in. So they don't know uh, where this text will end up. So they're just translating and then they are handing it back to the company, and we will analyze whether all the resources which we had sent have come through, especially string IDs and other things. And then we look at compile the localized resources, and then we rebuild the localized software. So this is a typical localization process for a software company. But localization is not only for a software company, right? Localization is also done for most of the uh, multinational companies. For example, McDonald's, right? McDonald's also go through the globalization localization process. And end of their localization process, what they have done is like, if you go to McDonald's in India, you will find spicy burger, and that McSpicy burger is localized for only India. You will never find it in US. In the same way, a beef burger, which is commonly available in US, will not be available in India because in that localized market, it doesn't make sense. So they remove the that fun feature or that uh, product from the localized market. So this is the localization process. And end of the localization process, it will be a product like this, right? This is a Microsoft Excel, which is completely localized and available in Tamil. As you can see here, all your menu items are translated. Even your book name, if you try to save it, it will be in Tamil. So you can use this product when it is developed. And if you're using it, you won't feel that this product was developed in English. You will not get that feeling. You will always feel that, okay, this was developed with me in in their mind. So that's what a good localized product tries to achieve, that this product was developed for the end user, wherever the end user lives. And that is the end of localization. So We have come to the end of our session, and if I have, this is my contact details. You can email me if you have any questions, or you can connect to me in LinkedIn. Thank you.
Thank you, Rajiv. Thanks for your
Thanks.
presentation. Par-
Yes.
Participants, if you have any queries, kindly post it in the chat box. And there was a small disturbance from your side, Mr. Rajiv, during the presentation.
Where? Which one?
And very, very small audio disturbances, but that was okay. And
Okay.
I have some questions from the participant side.
Yeah.
The first question is, you talked about CLDR, right? Common
Yes.
Local Data Repository. Is it
Yeah.
region specific? Is it different from a region to region, or is it a globalized one?
It is region based.
Region
So
based.
yeah, I can present that CLDR. Hold on a second. So what it does is CLDR will just go through all the locals. So it is just an XML file where you can see different regions. So for example, it says uh, India, and it will give date formats for all India. Like in Tamil, this is how it is. In English, this is how it is, like that. Let me show you an
Right.
example of that one. Yeah.
Thank you, Raj. Then another question: is there any legal issues in making the software globalized, or we have to take care of any legal things before we start globalizing a product?
Before globalizing, you don't need to. But if you're going to sell the product in certain regions, yes, you need legal. Because, for example, if you're using any maps or flags, everything, you can check in the internationalization or IIT process and identify these changes. But when you're going to sell, especially if you're involved with financial markets or security, you have to go through the legal teams to say that you need to sell them. For
Oh,
example, Facebook is free. So even if Facebook wants to say that, okay, we will integrate with Paytm, that's when they have to go through the legal authority and say that, okay, we are integrating with Paytm, we need to collect other numbers, so is it okay for us to collect other number? And government will ask them to provide certain steps detailing how they are going to use this other number. They should not be storing it in any of those in their data. If they are storing, it should be encrypted, things like that.
okay, thank you. And is there any special tool for localization? And before Mr. Rajiv, kindly switch on your video so that participants
Okay.
can view. Participants, kindly
Yeah.
pin Mr. Rajiv Krishnan. Kindly pin the speaker Rajiv Krishnan. It's not Rajiv Krishnan presentation now. It's only Rajiv Krishnan you have to pin. Yeah. Right. Okay. The next question was actually, is there any special tool for localization?
There is no special tool, but if you're using any IDE for developing, like if you're using Visual Studio, then .NET Framework provides you a resource manager where you can go and pick up the resources from the specified language. But the special tool which is available is the pseudo translation. Like if you look for multilingual app toolkit, I can write it in the chat. It is a tool which is available in with Visual Studio, which will help you to generate the pseudo localization string, where you can use these pseudo builds to check for your localization issues. But most of the companies, they themselves have their own software for doing this localization.
Okay, thank you, Rajiv. And what are the career opportunities for students in localization or globalization?
So, so localization engineering is an different domain altogether. Well, like if you're thinking about product management, developers, testers, documentations, so the same way localization is a different vertical, right? It has its own career path. And also when you are starting with any companies, most of the companies nowadays think about localization. So everyone has a localization team in them. And uh, as a career opportunities, localization engineering is not taught anywhere. It is very industry specific. But if you are a good software developers, especially if you are good with parsing, writing codes to parse files, and just be aware of different cultures, that is a good starting point for becoming a good localization engineer.
So, can you suggest any specific subjects or something like that for getting into the localization careers? Anything which is mandatory to learn?
So mandatory to learn is not, but most of the time uh, in what we are looking for in good localization engineering is programming. For example, if you know Python programming, that is a good, what you call, a script language which is heavily used in localization. So if you know Python, that is a good starting point.
Thank you. Participants, do you have any other questions? If you have questions, please post it in the chat box. If you have no questions, then we'll wind up the session. Kindly, participants, kindly fill up the feedback, and the feedback link is given in the chat box. This form will be active for another 1 hour. Kindly fill it up before 1 hour.
Yeah, I will send you the presentation in the Google Drive share.
Yeah, sure. Mr. Raji will share his presentation and I'll mail you to all the participants. And if there are any questions, you can post, or else then thank you for the participants who behave with the high decorum throughout the session. Thanks for your active participation. And I am really thankful to the PhD management, my principal ma'am, secretary sir, vice principal sir, for having given me this opportunity to conduct the webinar. Hopefully, we'll be having another few presentations or webinars in the future. Thank you all the participants, and I really thank Mr. Rajiv who has generously accepted my invitation once I called him for a webinar. Thank you, Rajiv.
Thank you, Sri.
Shall we wind up the session? Rajiv, shall we wind up the session?
Yeah, sure.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thank you, Sridevi ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you. ஸ்ரீ ஸ்ரீ
மேம் மேம்
குட் மார்னிங். முடிஞ்சது செஷனா? நான் கார்த்திக் மெயில்ல இருந்து லாகின் பண்ணிருக்கேன்.
நான் உங்களை ரொம்ப நேரமா தேடிட்டே இருந்தேங்க மேம். இருக்கீங்களான்ட்டு.
என் மொபைல் ஹேங் ஆயிடுச்சுடா, சோ ஐ ஜாயின்ட் வித் கார்த்திக்ஸ் மொபைல்.
ஓகே ஓகே, ஹாப்பி, வெரி ஹாப்பி. ஓகே வாங்க மேம்.
ஓகேடா, நைஸ், இட் வாஸ் நைஸ்.
ஓகே, பட் நான் 1 hour பிளான் பண்ணிருந்தேன். அவங்க 40 மினிட்ஸ்ல முடிச்சிட்டாங்க.
40 மினிட்ஸ்ல முடிச்சிட்டாங்க.
அது அன்எக்ஸ்பெக்டட், அதனால சரி ஓகே நானும் க்ளோஸ் பண்ணிட்டேன்.
ஓகே ஓகே, பட் எந்த இதுவும் இல்லாம முடிஞ்சது.
ஒன்றும் பிரச்சனை இல்லை. ஆமா, அண்ட் பார்ட்டிசிபென்ட்ஸும் ரொம்ப வந்து நீட்டா கரெக்டா கொஸ்டின்ஸ் கேட்டு ஆன்சர் பண்ணி அது கரெக்டா இருந்ததுனால ஓகே. அந்த இதை வந்து ஃபாலோ பண்ணிட்டே இருந்தாங்க, இன்ஸ்ட்ரக்ஷன்ஸ் கரெக்டா ஃபாலோ பண்ணதுனால யாரும் பெருசா இந்த பிரசன்னா குடுக்கறது தான் ரொம்ப பெரிய டிஸ்டர்பன்ஸா இருக்கும்னு நினைச்சேன்.
ஆமா, இங்க இந்த ஹைதராபாத் யூனிவர்சிட்டி ஒரு ஒர்க் ஷாப் போயிட்டு இருக்கு எனக்கு, என்னோட ஐடியில 3 days அட்டெண்ட் பண்ணி. அதுல பயங்கர குளறுபடி, ஒவ்வொருத்தரா வந்து பிரசன்ட் பண்ணிட்டே இருக்காங்க. அவரு டென்ஷன் ஆகுறாரு.
அது கூகுள் மீட்ல அது ஒரு ப்ராப்ளம் இருக்குங்க மேம். பிரசன்னாவை கொடுத்தோம்னா ஸ்கிரீன் டக்கு டக்குன்னு மாறிட்டே இருக்குங்க. ஜூம்ல அந்த ப்ராப்ளம் கிடையாது, ஆனா கூகுள் மீட்ல அந்த ப்ராப்ளம் இருக்கு. அது பிரசன்னோன்னு யார் கொடுத்தாலும் அவங்களோட ஸ்கிரீன் பிரசன்ட் ஆக ஆரம்பிச்சிருக்கு. பட் ஓகே, அதனால தான் திருப்பி இன்ஸ்ட்ரக்ஷன் காமிச்சிட்டு இருந்தேன். தேங்க் யூ மேம், தேங்க் யூ சோ மச்.
ஓகே
ஓகே
பைடா.
என்ன பிரச்சனை?